of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Welcome, welcome, and we will get started. And Judy Maxwell is on her way, but she's not going to be sad. She misses the first part of the meeting, which is really just approval of the agenda. If there's any modifications.
We have one. I'd like to offer a supplemental personnel report to be added to the consent, and the report's dated today.
Very good, and I think all have had a chance to review. And so we will move on. And to public and staff, hearing from the community, and we do have Adam Piasecki signed up. Adam is going to come speak to us.
Good evening. I would like to read this letter that you will be getting electronically tomorrow. I'll get it today, and also she can give it to you. But basically, I'm the president of the Ithaca Teachers Association, and we need some support with something. And so I want to read this to you, and then we can respond or choose to respond at a later time. Dear members of the Ithaca City School District Board of Education, as elected members of the school board, I'm sure you take your role very seriously and strive each day to make sure that decisions are made in the best interest of the students in our schools. Your fellow school board members across the state are listening to the teachers, the students, and the parents regarding Common Core standards, state standardized tests, Regents exams, local assessments, and a very, very flawed teacher and principal evaluation system that has been implemented by the state education department. We hope that you are listening as well. Many school boards across the state have realized that high-stakes testing has increased the amount, and the increased amount of testing is negatively impacting the quality of education in our public schools, and they have chosen to do something about it. Excuse me. As of today, I have with me a list of 85 school boards across the state who have taken a stand against high-stakes testing and have adopted resolutions, and that number continues to grow. I have heard that it's over 100, but I haven't gotten that list yet. I have not yet heard from the Ithaca City School District school board members that a resolution is needed here in Ithaca. I am requesting that the members of the ICSD school board take action and adopt a similar resolution. This does not have to take a lot of your time. In fact, I am providing for you a boilerplate template and examples from 2 other districts for you to look at. I, along with other members of the Ithaca Teachers Association, are willing to help you draft this policy so that we can get it adopted in Ithaca. It is time for the ICSD school board members to speak up, along with all the others across the state, and take action as to what is happening in our schools. I also encourage you to be active and support legislation that's out there that would invoke a 3-year moratorium on the use of state assessments for high-stakes consequences for students, teachers, and principals. This pending legislation would postpone the implementation of Common Core Regents exams as a graduation requirement. It would provide an opportunity for educators to review the Common Core and to collaborate with each other to use their professional judgment to develop lessons that are developmentally appropriate and assessments to go along with it. As members of the school board, I know that you can make a difference in the lives of our students here in the school, and I look forward to coming up with a resolution and adopting it very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Anyone else wish to speak at this time? Adam was the only one signed up. Are we good? We're good. So we'll move on to student reps. And Michaela has her coat on, so she might as well go first.
Okay.
Well, it's like she has somewhere to go. So
It was just chilly in here. So the fall dramedy rumors is this weekend at 7 on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. The plan exam as well as the PSAT were taken by sophomores and juniors respectively last week. The Ithaca High School cheerleaders went to the Stack Championship this weekend and won the Most Spirited Award. The school store is currently open, and I believe it's open lunch periods during or in the cafeteria. The In place of a homecoming dance, we had a fall fest where there were Ithaca High School performers as well as different booths set up by the IHS clubs, and that was held in the new gym on Saturday. We had an announcement that junior prom will be held at the Statler this year. Senior trip and prom are still being determined their location. And tomorrow there is an information session on tips on applying to college tomorrow at 6 p.m. in Cole.
Before Fall Fest last Saturday, I just held a pep rally Friday before the football game. Many students saw Dr. Brown there. The Ithaca High School girls varsity swim team finished their 24th consecutive undefeated dual meet season. Last Thursday, site-based council held its first meeting and is still in need of a board member to attend. And a notable fact that just occurred today, senior Ikoju Ono earned a full ride to Columbia University through the Westbridge program, and she was notified of that full ride today.
Congratulations. That's great. Anything else? Very good. Elise, yes?
So about 25 high school students from our school just came back from Power Shift, which was last Friday through this Monday, and that was a conference where a bunch of high school and college students from around the country organized and rallied around climate change. And this week, on Thursday, high schoolers will also be going to Bioneers. A few high schoolers from the ecology class will be going to Bioneers, which is a similar conference about climate change. This Friday, there's going to be a dance for middle and high school students at ACS. It's going to be a Halloween dance, and it's sponsored by the Katrina Relief Family Group. And this past Wednesday, the PSAT was offered for high school students.
We also had a a second site-based council meeting of the year last week, and I was not able to attend, but I hear that it was a good meeting. And fall retreat happened several weeks ago, and that went well. And we're also wrapping up the pecan sales. Orders are due. Well, they're actually due today, but there have been some extensions given, so hopefully that will be a successful fundraiser for us. And that's all.
Okay. Jay?
So maybe you can help to clarify. At Ithaca High School, we had everybody take the PSA, all juniors. And at LACS, what was the situation there? You said you made it sound like it was voluntary.
Yes.
It's voluntary for sophomores and juniors at LACS.
Yeah, with priority given to juniors.
Yeah. But not everyone has to take it.
We had the reason we did it at the high school, correct me if it was, I don't know, a practice, an experience to experience it.
Equity, promoting your college career ready skills, or taking a PSAT, so multiple reasons.
So all the students had an opportunity to take.
Every student had an opportunity to take in strongly encouraged.
Practice is a good thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Any other comments, more comments at this time? We good? So if not, we'll move forward, and Sean.
My apologies, I thought you were talking about that. To Adam, thank you for reading that statement. We have a policy committee meeting on Thursday. I'm not sure it's the appropriate venue, but I know that I'm interested in the other resolutions of other districts and the conversation. So we can have the dialogue. We can try some other time to have that conversation as well.
Okay. Right, on any topic that you may wish to go right ahead.
No. Also, in regard to Adam, I'm a little confused that he's here before the Board of Education when yesterday I heard him on the radio saying specifically you wouldn't come to a Board of Education meeting to talk about to learn about the Common Core. So I'm a little confused about the message. It's inconsistent. That you would tell the public not to be bothered with the local Board of Education in regards to the Common Core, and then you would come to talk to us about the Common Core. I'm just responding. I'm not trying to enter into a debate tonight. I'm just pointing out, what I heard yesterday from you and then what I heard tonight.
Anyone else right now? Okay. If not, we'll go ahead with the consent agenda for you. A motion's good.
I'll move the consent.
Thank you. And there were several items on here that perhaps the finance could speak to.
We have a couple of contributions we should point out from folks. Now I got to find them in here. Let's see. For high school lacrosse, in memory of Jim Klein's, that is $2,500 contribution. I recognize
I saw that. That was nice.
Yep, that was great. Saw from Target in regards to Fall Creek for instructional supplies, the Readers Theater for some additional hours for some staff at LACS, a contribution for that. Was there others?
Yeah, PJs.
BJ's, right? BJ's as well.
Supplies.
And then I also saw WSKG
Yeah,
TV and radio working with the
$3,000.
television group here at the high school. So a number of things to point out there. They were a little different than usual. The ongoing tech contract with OCM BOCES is here. And we did ask to get a update on what all the contracts are there with BOCES.
Is this, do you know if this contract is internet service? Is it hardware?
This is hardware. This is our,
Is this the annual hardware?
yep.
Right, and a list of the items are certainly there in the Dropbox for Finance Committee. If you pull them up so you can see a detailed accounting of every item and what is entailed in this lease agreement. At Finance yesterday, it was asked of administration to get an accounting, really a history of where we are in the various lease agreements with OCM BOCES regarding the equipment that we are currently using and how long those agreements are for, where are we in the stages of each of those tranches.
So we're going to get that, update later.
Probably to Finance Committee.
Yeah. And you'll
Sure.
note also bids for some musical instruments. I'm not sure we've bought instruments in the last few years. This has got to be a first in a while.
I don't remember.
That's why I don't remember my instruments, so
Are we buying, well,
the list is there.
it's in the Finance?
Yep,
Good,
yep.
I'll check.
Yep, it's there.
Should look there.
But there's a variety of instruments, but we do probably want to go back and thank the Fine Arts Booster Group once more for all their efforts over the last few years, bringing instruments in the community back in, the Play It Again Ithaca program. They certainly do a lot of work and contribute a lot to providing instruments to any kids in the district that want them, certainly at the elementary level. That's the biggest barrier at that level to participate. So this is the district's part to add some instruments that are needed, and it's not a large amount of money, but it's significant pieces. Sean, did you have a question? Was there anything else, Brad?
I don't think so.
That's some of the color and detail. Any other questions? Motion's been made. All in favor? That's going to be Judy, Rob, Brad, Jay, Chris, Seth, Pat, and Eldred. Those against? That's going to be Sean. Motion passes. So, Dr. Brown,
Thank you, Mr.
on to
Three items here tonight. Well, first I wish to share with the public and the board that we will be well represented at this week's New York State School Board Association Conference. Ms. Harris is going to be the voting delegate. On Thursday, we're receiving a statewide award for publication of communication. The ICS, the Insider, is going to be recognized at a luncheon. We're very proud of that. And then I'm on a panel with colleagues, superintendent colleagues from Rochester, Schenectady, and superintendent in Long Island. We're there to just deal with Q&A. So I don't know what that's going to look like. And maybe hundreds of people coming up asking some random questions, but I don't know. But I know I'm up there with some pretty smart folks, and I hope that we can hold our own for an hour or so. So yeah, we're going to be there this week. Secondly, I invited Miss Mary Grover to come share. I came across another beautiful e-newsletter this weekend, but also learned that it's also in a hard copy. And it had an outstanding story about our own Carolina Elementary and the great work that's been done there, both on the instructional end and also on the business side as well. So Mary, you want to talk a little bit about what's happening this weekend?
I would love an opportunity to thank all of you for your support. We're really blessed to have a parent, Tereska Kornick, who wrote this article. And it's a result of a collaboration between retired teacher Jamie Moon Clark and excited teachers at Caroline, families, the Ithaca grounds crew, Amanda, Bill, everyone. Bob has done so much to help us make this happen. So we will be hosting a community conversation followed by a celebration where we'll have 3 outdoor classrooms featuring partnerships that we have with Cayuga Nature Center, TC3, Ithaca College, and then our teacher librarian, Amanda Robbins. And they'll be showcasing some of the interactive activities that are happening right now at Caroline classrooms. And then we'll also have some music and food, because what's a celebration without food and music? So we really hope that you can come to the campus and see the great things that are happening.
The publication is Tompkins Life. Did I see?
It's Tompkins County Life.
Tompkins County Life, got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
And one more time, Dr. Brown, when is the celebration?
Saturday morning, correct? 9 a.m.?
9 a.m. it starts with a small, brief conversation, and then 10 to noon will be the rotations through the outdoor classrooms. Students will be docents in outdoor wilderness, museum, and there'll be student work displayed. Love to have you.
I think we're hoping for a nice, beautiful day.
Oh, it's going to be beautiful. It's not a choice. It's not be beautiful.
Oh, yeah. And finally, Ms. Dancy, I wanted to share with the board and the community, you may have heard or seen a tweet here or there about conversations that we're hosting. We're starting with schools and all schools and departments, and we're hoping to engage the community in a conversation. And I appreciate Mr. Hayaseki coming to speak about us needing to be leaders. I see us as state and national leaders of this work, and I think now more than ever we need to be leaders and share a message. From my perspective, we're going out and having conversations about the Common Core. And just to be clear, I'm planning to write a lot in the coming weeks and share that with Ithaca Journal and other folks in Insider, be on the various radio stations, to talk about my reactions and what I think about what's happening. Again, it's not comfortable being leaders, but sometimes you have to step out there and talk about what you believe. And right now, I believe in the Common Core. Now, I don't want folks to confuse the Common Core with testing and teacher evaluation. And I think that's oftentimes what's happening. But the Common Core, and that's the conversation we're engaging folks in across our district and the community soon, about what it means and then what's next for us. And this was a slide I shared during convocation. As I was finishing up, I talked about how we as a district need to be now focused on the work that we've started and stay focused on it, but yet adaptive. And when we're talking about adapting to the needs of learners. And I keep telling folks, my babies are coming to a classroom near you soon. And I know we need to adapt to the way they think and learn. So what does that mean? Now that we have these national standards, what I'm saying, how I'm framing the conversation, and then I'm just there to listen. I'm not sharing a message. I'm just there to learn from some outstanding educators about what to do next. I see, and the research is supporting this, that here are things that are going to shift in the next few years significantly. Everything from what happens as far as instruction in the classroom to PD, to student-teacher interaction. These things are going to shift. There's much out there talking about what that may look like, but a lot of support for it happening. And the Common Core, from my perspective, is attempting to address that. You look, I hear it from people every day, negatives and positives about the Common Core. And I'll tell you, when I hear that from you, whoever's listening, the question I'm going to respond with is, well, name one. And oftentimes I get that silence, because I don't know how many folks have actually read the Common Core standards. And if you have, you will be able to recite one, but hopefully you'll be able to speak to the verbs that are in the Common Core. And these are the verbs. These are the same verbs we've been talking about for 3 years now, how we are going to get behind changing and implementing instructional practices in our district to support. These are things we want young people to do every day. And we have educators in our district, and some in the back right now, who do this, and I've been in their classroom better than any other teacher I've ever seen. This is what the Common Core is, if you read it. What I'm sharing with folks is that along those verbs, there are now tools that are impacting how we do those verbs, and in ways that hopefully will enhance how we do the way those verbs are saying we should interact with young people in classrooms. But I've also seen how these technology tools can take away from those verbs. And that's the conversation we're framing for our community right now about what is it, and I've quizzed the PTA council on how many of you can name all 7. Most can't. And it was interesting that we had one of the PTA council members who didn't know what the one at the bottom was, which is Instagram. And I know when she was saying she didn't know what it was, that her child has 2,000 followers on Instagram, and I'm one of them. And that she's written some of the most complex and persuasive essays in Instagram in 140 characters or less that I've ever seen. But yet we have many of our folks who don't even understand that these tools are available to our young people. So again, I put that up there just to spark some thought, because our best educators who understand the verbs can also now use these tools to implement the Common Core. And then these are the questions that we're posing to folks. And I'm telling you, we've had 2 of these conversations. We have dozens more planned. I've learned more in those 2 conversations that I had in the last year from any writing by a commissioner or anyone else writing about the Common Core. Because educators in our district understand what this means. How do we get young people to think more deeply in classrooms? How do we move to more student-directed versus teacher-directed experiences? And how do we move from an analog, a primarily analog environment to a more digital one? And I'm hoping we're not still having a conversation about staying in analog, because that's where we're comfortable. Because right now, young people are comfortable in a digital environment. And it's up to us now to make some adaptations instructionally to address it. So I just wanted the board and the community to know what's coming. And I want people to say I'm crazy, or to inform, I want people to just inform our thinking around this work right now.
Can you go back 2 slides? No, actually, to the first one with the circle.
This one.
That one, yes. My Wegmans conversations and everything I'm reading online, from a parent's perspective or perspective of union representatives who are representing their constituencies, you could take a giant blotter and just do test right across all of that in bright red. And that's what's not there that is concerning the folks who is not as deeply ingrained in how we're trying to move this work forward. So can you talk to, I mean, you haven't even put it on there. And that's the elephant in the room right now. How are we negotiating that component so we're not possibly destroying the potential the Common Core actually has?
So that's part of the community conversation, and because you asked for a quick reaction, I will give you one. And I know it may not be popular with some folks, but who decided that the stakes were high? When we look at the scores that came out today statewide, and we look at our own local scores, who said that the assessments that were given last year that were in support of the Common Core, and I'm not saying they were good tests, were rather high stakes. So let's define high stakes first. But if we allow assessment to get in the way of good teaching and learning, then we've already failed. We here locally have, and the local assessments we give were created by our teachers. I'm not going to be the superintendent come out there and say that our local assessments are bad, especially when I know how great our teachers are. So that's how we're assessing these verbs, which we're saying we do. And they're of quality, and they're assessing critical thinking. Why would we go out there and say they're a bad assessment? And John King will say it, and I don't agree with it all the time, but I understand what he's saying. He's saying the state is only mandating 1 test a year. Every other assessment that localities are given are locally determined. Now, that gets confused because APPR is requiring some assessments locally, et cetera, et cetera. We've been getting assessments. I've given PALS, a dozen other reading assessments in my career as a reading teacher. Those are all locally determined. So again, let's separate the conversation. Let's talk about assessment. let's talk about the Common Core, and then let's talk about teacher evaluation, and have a thoughtful conversation as a community, as a national leader of this work about what's best practice and what should happen going forward. Maybe we should have just a board one like this in the near future and broadcast it. I love the idea. That's all I have to add. So I said 3 things that I apologize for taking off.
I was waiting for the next subject, Dr. Brown.
Maybe an agenda item.
Right, this is Common Core testing, et cetera, is not an agenda item tonight, but we touched on it a bit. Thanks, Dr. Brown. Do anyone else want to speak to this before we move on from the board? All right. We will move on, and we'll move on to school district business. And if the lights are on, I can probably see that we're going to talk about secondary schools. And Jason, I think you're up.
I am, and I'm going to invite my friend Gina Michi to join me. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I want to introduce Ms. Gina Michi, longtime and beloved teacher at Boynton Middle School, 6th grade English language arts teacher. And she has a few different hats that she wears beyond when we talk about changing the dynamics between students and teachers. She's an innovator when it comes to that. Well, I should say she's a natural when it comes to that. Kids fall all over themselves, run down the hall to see her. She's here this evening to join me as a person that does the ELA work every day, someone that's experiencing these shifts that folks are talking about. What does this Common Core stuff mean, and what are high stakes, and what do her children face every day? And so the update today, we spent a lot of time last year talking about data from the high school, and we wanted to spend some time this evening talking about ELA and what our approaches are to ELA professional development. Look at curriculum and how we support our teachers to ultimately support our children. So we've got a few slides this evening, and we'll talk a little bit about data. And the only data piece that we're going to use actually is the state assessment. I'll talk about what changes occurred there. Gina's here to educate us a little bit in terms of, we talk about this word rigor quite a bit. Dr. Brown has often said, how do we rigor somebody? And Gina's increasing rigor every day for her children in a lot of different meaningful ways. And the state exam that's given at the end of the year, while she has no control over that piece, is given to the students. And the question is how do we prepare our young people for that? But more importantly, how do we prepare them to really reach those verbs? How do we synthesize things? How do we analyze information? How do we ultimately help children make critical choices around information that they're presented with every day, much as we do as citizens in this country, and ultimately that's what schooling is all about. So she's on the ground doing that. And we'll talk very specifically about what work we're doing within our PLCs across buildings, again, as well as the curriculum and professional development. So we begin with the 3 E's. As you know, we are an organization that has a vision to be 6,000 thinkers. The vast majority of those 6,000 thinkers are our children. So how do we engage our children every day? How do we educate them? How do we empower them to become the learners that we want them to be, become the thinkers that we want them to be? How do we engage our families in these conversations? How do we engage our teachers, our school board? How do we all empower one another to move forward, knowing that we're doing the right thing for children? We try to break this down. In many respects, we did a lot of work this summer. And as you know, as I talked to many of you, we have a concerted push within our secondary schools. And secondary is a bit different than elementary. We've got we've got a couple of sister schools in DeWitt and Boynton, so to speak. We have LACS, and then ultimately feeding to the high school, breaking out LACS as well. When we talk about where we want our children to be, I often give this example. The child in middle school was at Boynton for 5 weeks, then DeWitt for 5 weeks, and ultimately LACS 5 weeks. Do we progress along a manner that children are, in essence, acquiring the same skills? When I was the longtime principal at Boynton Middle School, that wasn't true. We didn't have outcomes. We couldn't say after 5 weeks, kids will have these couple of skills walking out. If they went to another school, here are the skills that kids can demonstrate. it was oftentimes very difficult to have conversations from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade, and then frankly non-existent to have conversations between 8th grade and 9th grade folks. We're trying to create a lot of opportunity for those things to happen, meaningful dialogue around that. So when we talk about things like the teaching and learning portal and creating opportunities to really see how our children, and when we develop these assessments as teachers in these release days, what are we looking to gain? What kind of skills do the kids have? And what does that mean for our discussion around instruction? So, again, clear progression of skills. The other piece I wanted to point out as well in this work that we've seen a big change in is the way we deliver our AIS services. I'm going to share some data sets here with you that many folks took a look at and said, whoa, we've got an explosion of AIS. We had the same thing in many respects 4 years ago when the cut scores changed. And the state released new cut scores at the end of July, 4 months after the students had taken the exam, 5 weeks still to go in school. What we're seeing and what we're really identifying in our AIS, I'll also share with you that when I was principal, AIS was, in many respects, a self-contained lab. If a child was not proficient by 2 points, they were put into a reading or writing lab or a math lab from September 5th through June 25th. The best we could say to a child is, well, hang in there, do your best, do what the teacher asks you to do, take the next exam, and hopefully you'll graduate out of AIS. I'm pleased to say that all of our middle schools have a much different model. It involves a lot of co-teaching. It involves targeted approaches. We've changed our master schedules in our buildings to reflect in many respects what we're calling an enrichment period, to identify and where students are struggling very specifically. It's dynamic in a sense that if a child, well, I'll actually back up a second, if a child isn't proficient by 2 points, like I said, they were relegated to that lab for the year. If a child was proficient by 2 points and their grades dipped, we never
touched them again. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
we did other mechanisms. How about that? But this new dynamic approach really looks at the whole child, starts to take some of the data pieces that we have. Can a student analyze 3 sets of written work, present a logical approach? If they struggle with that particular skill, and that's a big one, we might work with them intensively for 5 weeks. The assessments that our teachers are developing and putting into the teaching and learning portal is giving us that real-time data. The students are scoring pretty well, and that's learning about our children that are in front of our classroom every day. They might move on to a different piece. For too long, we couldn't have students in 2 music groups, if you will. Might miss family and consumer science because they had to sit in a math lab or reading. We built much better and more highly responsive programs for that. When you take a look at the data, you see about 50%, according to the state average anyways, are proficient. Now, when you receive as a family, and I received as a family as a parent of a middle schooler, the nice little tagline at the bottom that says, this information is brand new baseline data, cannot be compared to years past, and it's all Common Core aligned. So in many respects, it's a fresh start, if you will. Teachers, as the Common Core have been coming out, this is our first look at these new exams. So is this where we ultimately want to be? No, but it's a start. I've had those conversations with families, and again, going back to the engage and empower, how do we have those thoughtful conversations with real feedback given to our students and to our families? We can go on to the next slide as well, Dana. When you take a look at our cohort groups, we've got pretty sizable gaps. We know that our children with IEPs struggle tremendously on this new assessment. We've designed some new work in regards to our professional development around our human capital to address some of those pieces. So we're not overly pleased here. This is too reflective of too many other data sets that we have. So we have to really go after what we're trying to accomplish in terms of student improvement. Again, new baseline data. I will say that we do outperform, the ICSD does outperform the state average, does outperform our regional schools as well. At this point, all middle school teachers have access to all their student scores, so they know where students are struggling. again, the critical piece, and I'll tie it back into the AIS piece, is understanding who our children are and where they're struggling the most and trying to build the systems around to support. Fair enough? So I wanted to intro that way. We can go to the next slide. Jean is here to talk a bit about that rigor piece.
So I'm going to ask everyone just to take a moment to read both of these exam questions and responses and just shout out anything that you might notice. And the one thing that I want to tell you is that both of these responses received a 2 out of 2, which is the highest score. Don't be afraid, I can make everyone do push-ups.
The second one has verbs, and verbs that are consistent with thinking versus just a learning question, how does, as opposed to explain.
To explain, right? You also notice that on the first one in 2009, they just ask you to give details from the article to support your answer. And specifically in the last year's exam, it asks for 2 specific details from the passage, which meant the student had to quote from the text. So you can see that in the bottom one where the student is actually quoting from the text. The first one also just requires a student to basically read the passage and give details. And in some cases, the details in this response are not completely accurate. For example, the student says paddle boat, which we all know what a paddle boat is, when the proper response should have been paddle a boat. So to me, that's a big difference, but the state said that's not a big deal. And I think that's got some interpretation issues, but the state allowed that to happen. That in 2013, we're asking students to do twice as much. We're asking them to analyze the author's purpose. We're asking them to analyze through inference. We want them to create those details from the text that support the response. So not only do they have to make a claim, which is the language that we're using, not only do they have to make a claim, but they have to back it up with evidence from the text. And if you go on to the next slide, I had examples of just 2 years ago. This was a multiple choice question. So students had a certain amount of time, and this is from 6th grade, a certain amount of time to read many passages and answer multiple choice questions. And you can see the multiple choice questions were about like this. They can best be described as. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see a huge difference in just 1 year, same grade level, what we're asking students to do. And if you'll notice on this one, where the lines need to, they want to know if they want which line illustrates the knowledge the narrator has, but the characters in the story do not. That's a big analysis piece, especially for a 6th grade student. And it requires students, as you can see from all the answers, to go back to the text, reread, and then make the best answer. Now that takes time. And students were not given any more time on the test. They had about the same amount of time to, about the same amount of questions, the same amount of passages as they had in years past. But the questions were this much harder. And many of our students were not finishing the exams. So the first time for me in 10 years, I had students that always finish everything were having difficulty finishing.
So I mentioned the AIS changes, a little bit of, we can go right to this. So what are we doing within our PLCs and what does that look like? Couple pieces. Every school has its own grade level PLC, so you'll see on Mondays at Boynton, the 6th grade ELAs are meeting together, combined team, same thing at DeWitt, same thing at LACS along humanities lines. We're also doing building by building. Once a month, Boynton and DeWitt come together actively in a joint PLC. So now you've got 4 7th grade ELA teachers talking about student work. So imagine moving from the 4-item multiple choice now to this long narrative piece. So they're really analyzing student data. What does it say? What are our students expected to do? What can instruction look like in that classroom to prepare students for that increased level of rigor, right? What does it look like on a day-to-day basis in the classroom? So we're seeing some good work between those two buildings. Being up in Diane's here from LACS, talking with her about the shifts to Common Core, and it's pretty exciting with her being at Boynton last year and back at LACS this year, the exchange that's occurring between those staffs, that folks are looking to go to Boynton to learn from one another and LACS to learn from one another. So those shifts and those conversations are occurring as well.
We're also shifting some conversation within content areas so that this isn't just the responsibility of the English department. This is the responsibility of everyone to teach literacy. And that's a big shift in the conversation in the buildings. And at our building last year during staff meeting, we took the pre-test for the 7th grade. We had the entire staff take the test to see the level of questioning and the amount of rigor and the having to go back and close read. You know, college educated teachers themselves were going back and having to reread the text, and it took them a long time. And so we all sort of developed strategies from there of what they could do in each of their content areas to help teach literacy.
In regards to professional development, we had all 3 middle schools involved in the interdisciplinary learning training that occurred over the summer week-long training. We had 3 teams of folks working collaboratively together and ultimately culminating in that three-day work session to really talk about what are the common skills, what are the common applications, kind of an agreement along the lines we concluded last year for our local assessment. All 3 middle schools working together collaboratively to create that. So when Dr. Brown talks about our folks creating those assessment pieces, we went along literacy standards, literary standards, and saw those 3 buildings come together and collaboratively develop something. So those were new ventures as well. Gina also in her role, and I forgot to mention when she was introduced, is what is called an ambassador to the Network Team Institute in Albany. So she's been there learning about the early rollouts of the ELA modules and how these impact the districts. We've also had folks in collaboration with Boise's and Beth Dreyer doing some literacy standards and EL work as well. So we've done along the lines of professional development. In regards to curriculum work, we as 3 middle schools have all agreed to give 1 module a try this year, certainly along the lines of how can that be more interdisciplinary. So it's pretty exciting when you go from an English class to a social studies class to a science class, and there's talking about learning targets that overlap and using some of those same verbs that we're not throwing children off from one class to the next and siloing along the lines of curricular areas. We've also are in the process of developing 3 release days. So we're going to invite and have 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade all go off and do some work very specifically around ELA and EL standards and roll out what the modules will look like. So folks have dedicated time and support to do that. Our instructional coaches are also included in that training. Mr. Lee Genthal, who you all know is heading up much of that training, with Gina as our ELA curriculum chair, assisting in that role. So folks will have 3 dedicated days outside the classroom, much like the elementary schools do, to develop this work, continue to build upon student work, and what instructional practices are most effective in the classroom. Recently, we actually had a quote-unquote small release day for just Boynton staff. I got to tell you, being at Boynton for 10 years, and when you oftentimes ask folks to be out of the classroom, they would fight you tooth and nail because they want to be with their students. It's pretty exciting, and it's a great problem to have when you have 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade teachers wanting to go off-site and work together as a multi-grade level team and really talk about what skills are we trying to acquire from 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. Having those thoughtful conversations was pretty important. So we just want to conclude with a few pieces or systems that are in place that help support all 3 of those PLC, PD, and curriculum areas. The instructional coaches are a large portion to helping support the PLC work and Common Core alignment and what that looks like in the classroom. The teaching and learning portal, Lynn and I have been out to see all the principals, and she's now getting invites from many PLCs to start figuring out what does the data look like that's already in there. We have all the state testing assessment pieces in there. We also are working with having the local assessment that our teachers created last year in there. But now it's time for us to start populating with the common assessments that we've long created over the last couple of years, and really start having those collaborations across buildings. And again, the regular PLCs across buildings are some pretty critical work as well. So those are some of the pieces around ELA for our middle school.
Questions, comments?
What module did you choose?
We all chose the first module.
Which is?
You mean like the book? They're all called Module 1 for each grade level.
Oh.
So the book for 6th grade, because you used to teach 6th grade, right? We're doing Percy Jackson's Lightning Thief. And so we're doing all Greek mythology, which ties into the social studies curriculum.
Yeah. Yes, that's good. That's good.
Go ahead, Judy.
Is point now back where you have teams that have like 2 ELA, 2 math, 2, so you're back to true team. Okay.
What that it's what you're alluding to, Judy, we at Boynton, they've eliminated the reading class to create this enrichment class.
Okay.
Enrichment class is a skills acquisition-based class, so that's really getting to where our students are struggling, and all teachers are on board with that. So there's been some pretty exciting shifts in one building.
So there's an English class and no reading, and then in 7th grade there'll be a foreign language.
Correct.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about, yes.
Yeah.
Instead, we have that enrichment class where we do reading skills on top of the English class, as well as math fluency skills.
This is a terrible word, but are the children grouped for the school's skills they're deficient?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so.
Fluid?
Well, so that's where that real-time data is helping inform where students may work on particular skills.
Yeah, but it's fluid as they need to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to use the word dynamic around that as much as we can.
Yes.
Since this is 6th grade, are you folks seeing a need for or a lack of tools or skills that the kids are coming into 6th grade with from 5th grade? Or is there, because there's got to be some things that jump out.
There's definitely a difference. I've noticed some of the students, now that I'm using the module, some of the students who used the module last year, because I know the elementary schools are really working on that, they have the language and some of the protocols already. So there's less, I don't have to spend all that time teaching those protocols because they have the language and the knowledge and they're doing it. And the conversations that students are having is just amazing. And as a teacher, I had to learn to let them have the floor. And that's really what the Common Core does. And it's mind-boggling how much they're critically thinking and they're respectful of each other and their ideas. And I'm very, very impressed.
So, go ahead, Chris.
Just from what I heard you folks saying, one, we've gotten the 3 middle schools together to drive consistency. We've got peer groups. We're talking about the same thing over content-rich learning. That's what I took away from this.
Go ahead, Elder.
Has technology been abused throughout your classroom?
Yes, we all have the eNote boards, and in fact, in 6th grade, what we did between Boynton and DeWitt is we took all of the modules and all of the lessons, and we created PowerPoint presentations so that we have something to go along with each unit. We're using that rather than paper, and the kids love to go to the board and circle things and move things around, and it's really, really amazing.
And how do you see the technology closing the gap for the students who may not be at level and allowing them to participate with more confidence? And I guess the flip side of that is for the kids who are way up here, how are they using it to sort of come back to the
Well, technology to them is interesting and engaging, and they would much rather play with that board than listen to me talk. And and they actually teach me things. I know, like, sometimes if I, have my iPad out, I will say, oh my gosh, how do I do this? How do I flip it? And they showed me how to do it. So they love to problem solve and do things their self, and they're certainly going to pay attention to that rather than what I have to say. It's really true.
Brad, go ahead.
So if a child's going to succeed here, the metric of ag grade reading, third grade, becomes pretty important. Or it's going to be pretty hard to succeed in what you're asking these children to do is sixth grade if they can't read that passage well.
If they're not comprehending at that level. Reading is something we can talk more about as far as them actually reading the text, but thinking and comprehending at that level, which we can hold my tongue before also.
But if they can't actually read it, they're never going to comprehend it. So that at grade, 100% at grade metric is pretty important.
And part of these discussions, Jason, these are our ongoing budget discussions early throughout the year, getting updates from elementary, high school, middle school. We've long, I hate to say complained, about the lack of cooperation and collaboration between DeWitt Point and really middle school, high school. And it sounds like that has certainly changed, but the key to that has been release days, PLC time. Well, time, right? So, and that's I believe in the investment that the community, the district has made over the last few years to try to make this happen.
I think those are critical pieces. I also think critical pieces like Lynn Vanderwerf with the Teaching and Learning Portal, frankly, to be able to be with people, to show them the power of that tool. And the question was asked in terms of the sixth grade folks, the information that Gina has at her disposal with the teaching and learning things that are coming out of the elementary school are much higher than what our current 7th and 8th grade folks have. The instructional coaches have been critical to all this work. So yeah, I mean, there's a real systematic approach, and my hope is what we're talking about is just a real natural overlap of the resources that are put together to try to help this collaboration. Because it's informed collaboration. It isn't just folks getting together saying, hey, how are you? It's analyzing student work, tracking that, uploading what information we have in terms of what we believe is important to measure for students. Having that rich dialogue around instruction in the classroom is critical.
And
We're still early.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know from the audit report a few weeks ago that our fund balance isn't as big as it used to be. But there's a reason for that, because there's been initiatives that have been started that we did not do before.
I share with Dr. Brown and Dr. Landa all the time that we have some big, substantial changes that are impacting students in a very positive way, impacting staff in a very positive way. And as I pointed to Diane earlier, Diane was a social studies teacher at LACS for a long time. I was a high school teacher at the high school for a long time, and we met each other 0 times. And frankly, and all of you and all the work that you do get to collaborate with one another. I think we've had this discussion around the lines of coaching, but when we don't dedicate time and focused time, then we're at a loss. We're not taking advantage of the expertise that we're surrounded by.
Good stuff.
Hey, speaking of time together, the high school's implemented a program this year involving PLCs or professional development, and it involves voluntarily giving teachers the opportunity to attend professional development opportunities or to observe one of their colleagues in their own setting. And it sounded like a wonderful idea for real growth and the skills of teachers and learning. Is something like that even possible for the middle school level? And what, if any, plans are there to implement something like that at the middle school level?
Yeah, we don't have any formalized plans, but 3 principals have talked a little bit about it. It's early. working with Mr. Powers at the high school, trying to assess what the impact has been. I've been with the district for 21 years, and we've always had contractually 2 observation days. Those are difficult because folks don't want to be out of the classroom waiting for their students, but I think the high school has created a pretty interesting peer review model that we can do a lot of work with and from, and continue to see the impact of not only building a pretty strong collaborative community, but also one that really begins to look at what coaching in a classroom looks like and what best practices do and what seeing our students in other classes respond to, and frankly, folks keeping each other on the toes, which is often what I hear from our colleagues when I step into the building. So that's early. They've seen a lot of success with it, and our hope is through the collaborations that success breeds success, and we're going to keep moving in this direction.
Do you think something like that's possible at the middle school level?
There's really no limitation to. I don't think there's barriers to it. I don't.
Any other questions, comments? Anything else, Dr. Brown?
No, not
Gina, thank you very much for all you do, and thank you for being here tonight. Jason, as always, very good. It was very important for me to hear that, so that was good. I appreciate it. Thanks. And we'll move on, and as we do, and Cornell collaboration. Speaking of collaborations, I guess we'll talk about more collaboration. That other entity that many of our students go to.
Maybe while Kyle is setting up, I can make an announcement. We are live tweeting the board meeting starting tonight. So you can see my...
Oh, thank God. I was waiting. I was really waiting.
Board event website. We'll be following the hashtag AskCSDBOE. We're sharing highlights from the meeting, but we're also asking folks to comment, react, or ask questions that in time we may even get to some of those questions that come in via Twitter. So just trying something out. So I think there are a couple of tweets that have already been sent out to talk about what was shared a minute ago. So we'll talk more about this in coming weeks.
Can they comment on the lowlights too, or just the highlights? All right, we're gonna selective comments. And Cal Walker is here tonight. Thank you. And I see the board working.
Yeah.
Yes. I, as most of you know, am Cornell's outreach liaison to the Ithaca School District. It is a part-time position. It is one that I've been in for a few years. Prior to that, I was on campus in the Learning Strategy Center and the Center for Learning and Teaching for 15 years. And with the transition to this work, it's been a lot of fun. And this is my third fall update to the board on some collaboration activity. Now, Cornell, like all large major research universities, there's nobody there that has his or her arms around the full breadth and depth of outreach. I mean, it's just impossible. And so what I do in my position is simply to add additional value, helping to make outreach more intentional, particularly with the ICSD. And so the focus of our outreach continues to be promoting collaborations between our two institutions. And those collaborations are informed by an understanding of what the district's needs and priorities are. And once those have been identified, it is a matter of looking to match Cornell outreach capacity with those needs. And when we talk about capacity, we're really talking about existing and potential outreach capacity. And the net result of that is that it helps to facilitate connections. Communication between folks who are doing the work, teachers in the classroom, outreach units at Cornell, units and individuals, engaging in real, intentional, proactive conversations about very specific results-driven outcomes. There's something we are looking to accomplish, and working together we can do that. What is that working together? It all kind of orbits around the critical work that's happening in this district. And what is that? Obviously, that is teaching and learning. And most of the collaboration efforts that I'll be talking about tonight, excuse me, revolve around these 5 bullet points. A lot of it is curriculum extension and enrichment, research, and I'll give a very specific example of that in a little bit, evaluation, and certainly always the priority of getting students on campus and volunteers in your schools. So I asked Dr. Brown and the leadership team, what are some examples of notable collaborations in the district since the last time I was here to talk to you folks? And so we're just going to look at some of those. Certainly the instructional coaching involved in partnership with Cornell's Institute for Public Affairs. Gloria Miller and some of her colleagues have worked very closely with the district on that particular initiative. The Fall Creek After School Enrichment Program, a partnership with Cornell's Public Service Center, was written about in district publications, obviously including The Insider, as were most of these. Here are a couple of us that were written about in The Insider. Examples of Cornell collaboration. Abbott, advancement, Abbott. I knew this. Advancement via individualized determination. There you go, determination. I knew this. I had a brain moment. So the Abbott and Cornell partnerships, I'll also talk about that a little bit. In fact, some specific examples of grades 9 through 12 in Abbott. I mentioned getting volunteers in schools. Cornell has a significant cadre of retirees who are volunteering in schools on a regular basis. And I mentioned the Insider. There are some specific examples around collaboration there that I'll point out. And then a very exciting one that aligns with the District World Languages Initiative. I'll show an example of this, a collaboration between a Cornell unit and one of the elementary schools. So Abbott, which was just mentioned, there are a number of Cornell units that are partnering with Abbott. The Public Service Center is one of them. PSC hires work-study students to serve as Abbott tutors. PSC also hires a student to be the Abbott liaison, helping to coordinate activity on campus of those Abbott tutors in terms of selection and retention and those kinds of things. That's a 7-year partnership and counting. And Amy Shumavong is the principal contact at the Public Service Center. Now, the Abbott 11 classes have been working with students in architecture, art, and planning, students for diversity for several years now. These students are coming into schools a couple times a month and working directly with Abbott students on very specific types of initiatives, service-oriented, as well as college preparation. Just a couple or 3 shots of some activity at the top there. You can't see it very well, but these are high school students. These are Abbott students who have been engaged in a discussion with Cornell students about what a college student's typical schedule might look like. And so they share their ideas, and then the college students kind of facilitated a conversation, sharing the specifics of their own schedules and comparing notes. Just some other action shots of students on campus engaged, Abbott and Cornell students. At 12, those seniors have been working with the Office of Academic Diversity Initiatives over the course of the last year. The advocates from that unit at Cornell are also in the schools on a regular basis, engaged in very purposeful and intentional kinds of outreach with students. Back to Abbott 9, one of the Abbott teachers, and parenthetically, I'll just add that last week I, again, for the, I guess, 5th year in a row, was invited to come into an Abbott 9 class, and I always come in and speak to them as they get into the unit on life goals. And so I was very happy to be able to do that again last year. And not just myself, but a number of folks from Cornell have been invited over the years to come in and participate. A particular addition to what those students have been doing, this has been a partnership with the Center for Engaged Learning and Research, directed by Richard Kiley at Cornell, where some Evidence students have been working with them with their social justice in the city class. I also mentioned at the beginning, getting students on campus is one of the priorities, and so when these students are on campus for these types of engaged activities with specific Cornell units, there's always an emphasis and a premium on and highly requested to be able to take campus tours. There are a lot of different sites that are very engaging, and students like to visit those, and we're always trying to facilitate those requests. Just another group shot. The students are on Central Campus at the top. There's a collaborative activity of some kind going on here, listed in the bottom. I mentioned the second language learning in children research project that is going on. This is a collaboration, as you can see, between Cayuga Heights Elementary School and the Cornell Infant Studies Lab. I mentioned that the results of this research can have some pretty significant implications, as I understand it, from having conversations with Matt Landau about the World Languages Initiative. So what's going on in this particular effort at Cayuga High School? Well, they're partnered with the unit at Cornell offering Spanish enrichment program to elementary school students, ages 5 to 10. Now, typically, when public schools are looking at language instruction, they're not generally looking at the elementary school level, or have not historically been. The outreach unit at Cornell is providing lesson plans, providing assessments, and what is the overarching goal? That is simply to facilitate a study, document some research on the benefits of foreign language instruction with a population and an age group where that kind of instruction is typically not happening. What are we learning? What is the ability of students at that age to learn a foreign language, particularly, as I believe in this case, where that instruction is being given, I think, on a weekly basis, on a once-a-week basis. And again, there's alignment with the district priority around world languages. And so I have a video clip from some activity that is going on in that research at Cayuga Heights Elementary School.
And then you can just click. All right, so here's the last one. Listen and tell me if you know what language. Spanish? Listen again. You don't know? Okay.
And when we get to questions, I'm sure that Matt can certainly field some of those. I mentioned the Insider earlier, and in the most recent issue, there's a feature on the Cornell Center for Material Research, and it's the Collaborating with Cornell column. This is an important collaboration because, it's important collaboration because this is another means by which we can increase awareness of outreach activity and promote accessibility, greater accessibility to that. And how does that happen? Well, think about what it's doing. When we run this column with every issue, we're highlighting various examples of outreach activity and partnership between Cornell and the school district. Those pieces can be submitted by the district, by the outreach folks at Cornell. And what does that do? That helps to inform folks about the opportunities and the various possibilities. People may read about something, so this would be great to do in my class. I never knew this kind of outreach capacity existed. How can I tap into that? And every column has a contact person, contact information, and it makes it fairly easily accessible and hopefully inspires further collaborations. Just a couple more slides. This one I wanted to point out because here's the ongoing challenge. How do we help educators in the district become more aware of the outreach opportunities at Cornell and help those to be, and how can we make those more easily accessible? So this particular slide will share an example of what we have tried to do. It was kind of a trial balloon, didn't get a whole lot of traction, but I think you should know about it. And then the next one will address the flip side of that coin. Folks at Cornell who want to do outreach to schools and don't really know where to start. So first this one. This is a video clip that will feature two very familiar voices of folks in the district. One is Lynn Vanderwerk, who I think is here, and the other is Roger Sevilla. Now, let me say that Red Ops is designed to tap into a Cornell outreach portal that houses a lot of information about K-12 outreach opportunities that are grade and curricular appropriate. And we'll see that it's designed to be an interactive database, and this is about a 1.5 minute video clip.
Welcome to Red Ops, a one-stop shop to promote collaboration, communication, and information exchange between Cornell University and Ithaca City School District educators. Red Ops features 2 easy ways to help you connect with materials, resources, and partnerships at Cornell.
One way to connect with Cornell is to search for existing resources and programs. To do this, click on the link at the left and you will be taken to the Cornell Outreach portal. Here, you can browse by topic, or you can use the search box at the top of the page.
If you don't find what you're looking for, click on the Request for Assistance link and fill out the short form. Once you click Submit, your request will be directed to the appropriate person at Cornell.
If you have feedback or suggestions on how we can improve Red Ops, please contact us at the email at the bottom of the homepage, redops@icsd.k12.ny.us.
That particular effort didn't get a lot of traction. It was well conceived to be able to fill a void and to ease connectivity. It needs a lot of work. There may be any number of reasons why it didn't get a respectable number of hits, but there may still be something there that can be refined to make it more viable. Well, there may not be, but I just wanted to show you folks that there are efforts going on to try to fill the connectivity void. Just before I entertain any questions, I want to show you one other thing that's not a part of this particular presentation. I just need to go to Cornell's website, which I will do very, very quickly, and go to public engagement and down to Public Service Center, and then to K-12 outreach. Now let me say that this is very much a work in progress. And here was the idea. What if there are folks on campus, student groups, professors, graduate students, outreach units in the STEM discipline? What if there are folks who want to do some outreach and don't really know where to start? This button should say click to collaborate with schools. Very much a work in progress. There's some information about my role as outreach liaison. And here was the question. What if we asked school districts in the county, and Dryden was inadvertently omitted, but as I said, this is a work in progress. This is a website of the Public Service Center that I have been working with them on this particular picture. What if we asked the school districts in the county to share some information that could be posted to whet people's appetite about specific outreach opportunities and needs within those districts. So let me give you an example of what this, and we designed a very simple template, just one page. And so let me show you what Newfield says, because frankly, that's the only thing we have up right now. There would be the district's website, the district's mission statement. What is your reason to be? What is important to you? What do you stand for? What is the mission? Who is or are the principal contact folks in that district for outreach related activity at Cornell or potential connectivity? In this instance, it happens to be the superintendent. And then we simply ask on the template, what are some basic facts about your district do you want people to know? You probably can't read that. It's relatively small. They say that there are approximately 800 students in their district at Newfield with a student ratio of 15:1. Approximately 50% of those students continuing education beyond high school. Percentage of students passing Regents exams in Newfield, 95%. So those are the 2 or 3 sentences they chose to offer as basics. And see, here's the key question. What is your particular district leadership's stated needs in terms of potential connections and outreach at Cornell? Now, they list a few things here: foster closer ties with Cornell in hopes of getting more of our students excited about a path in their lives that will eventually lead to a road to a four-year college. Number 2, provide opportunities for students to broaden their worldview. Number 3, allow students to explore options they wouldn't otherwise have to improve their lives. So what does that do? If you've got 6 districts in the county, with a very simple template like this, saying these are our outreach priorities as a school district. There are folks on that on Cornell's campus with outreach capacity. I have no idea who they are. They have no idea who I am. So the road to connectivity is not going to come through me. And I'm okay with that. We are simply trying to figure out how can we put information out there to make it easier for people to connect. And so those are just a couple of examples. My intention tonight was to come and share some things with you different from the last time I was here, and show you that the outreach intention, we're still being very intentional in outreach efforts. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer what I can.
Questions?
Sorry.
It's fine, we can get that later. Questions? Anything? Well, Jay, go ahead.
There was a big meeting that we had at Boynton, what, a year ago was that Cornell came down and... Where was it? Was it high school?
High school, yeah.
The cafeteria?
Yeah, it was in the cafeteria. Okay,
Yeah.
I had the wrong school. So anyway, is that planned again, or is it happened?
We just had one last.
That's what I wondered.
Is
Yeah.
that about the outreach fair?
That was more about.
It was the outreach.
Okay, you're thinking about the outreach fair.
Right.
We didn't do an outreach fair this year. We moved away from that opportunity to do more things online and to be much more focused on what we did. We were going to do. But we haven't talked about next year. Maybe an opportunity to do it again next year.
Anything else for Kyle? Are we good?
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. We'll move on. We'll just keep moving on here. The next item, tomorrow night, in accordance with state law, we are mandated to have a hearing regarding New Roots Charter School and their reauthorization. They are at the 5-year mark, and they are making their applications to SUNY Charter School Institute, and as the home district of New Roots Charter School, we are mandated to have a public hearing. And that public hearing, we believe, will be here tomorrow in this room at 6 o'clock. And we just want to give everybody an opportunity to voice their opinion about what that evening looks like. It is not a board meeting. It is not a voting meeting. It's not a discussion meeting. It's not a meeting where we need a quorum. We have to provide a public venue and a way to record what people say, and that will be this room, as far as I know. We're set up. Well, that's, I suppose that's a question, but we're basically set up here that people come in and they can speak for 2 minutes, and then they can basically go on home.
Recorded, captured.
Okay.
You know, I guess I will say more. Obviously, New Roots knows that there's a meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock here, and they have said that they are going to, in their communication to their community, they will leave New Roots at 4:30, and they're going to march on this building and have a nice walk in the afternoon. I'm not sure. It takes an hour and a half to get from the Clinton House to here, but that's what they will do. I'm prepared to be here. I will be here. I suppose I will be a part of running the meeting a little bit. I see no reason to have presentations by any group, one way or the other. This is an opportunity for the community to voice a 2-minute opinion. The Charter School Institute, this is a letter. We received it. It is dated October 10th. The district received it October 11th. And we have 30 days in which to have a hearing. And within this letter, I will point out that the Charter School Institute, SUNY, has said that they will consider approving or not approving New Roots as early as October 28th, which I'm not sure whether this is a new Common Core curriculum, but I think that's less than 30 days. You know, Dr. Brown, I don't know. So, but this is SUNY and State University of New York and State Ed, so this is their math, and their math says that they can start to, they can consider their application as soon as October 28th. We do have 30 days. I think they probably missed the date a little bit, but why should they proofread their letters that they sent us? That would be an unnecessary burden on the state education office. I'm just
we have received word that they are going to extend and push that date to here, to make a decision on New Roots until later in November. And they are looking forward to hearing from the public comments that are generated tomorrow night before making a decision. So they have extended that timeline. Maybe they noticed that it was less than 30 days, or maybe they just wanted some more time. I don't know.
So, Ray, go ahead.
We have an opportunity for people to submit written, so if two minutes is too limiting, there's plenty of opportunity to submit information.
It'll be collected.
Or it can be collected tomorrow night, or they can email it in. We have that on our website, Daniel?
We have it in a press release on our website, and I've already received many email.
Okay, so it's in a press release on our website. And then I also just want to make sure taxpayers in Ithaca understand this Board of Education has absolutely no role in approving or disapproving New Roots Charter School. I know I get people grab me all the time and say, why do you have that school? And it's not our role. That is approved only by the state of New York. We have absolutely no role. We could vote unanimously for it, and they can turn it down. We could vote unanimously against it, and the state could approve it. So we just want to make it clear that this board has no direct role in approving or disapproving, and therefore we can, as individuals, we can submit information if we want, but that's our only role.
I would add a little bit to that. We can have a role. We can have a response from the Board of Education to Charter School Institute on our opinion, on our feelings, on any information that we want to share with the Charter School Institute regarding New Roots. So we certainly can, as a collective body, create a response that we wish to share with the state. And that does not have to be done this week by the 28th, but that's certainly an item that we don't have to decide that tonight. But that is something that we will at some point need to either form a response or not. It does have some weight, I believe. I do believe they at least look at comments from the home districts or the Board of Educations in the district that New Roots is being compared to. Just as a reminder, New Roots and their information that they are sending to the state, they have to compare themselves to their home district with it, which is the Ithaca City School District. Jerry, go ahead.
You say that we're recording. What does that mean, you think, tomorrow?
Is capturing the comments on via videotape and recording it.
So will be videotaped tomorrow night?
Yeah.
And that will be shipped, as before, that will be shared with
Charlie to do, yeah.
Instead of making Danielle create a transcript of the whole evening.
That's fine. Yeah.
We're going to share the video.
I just wondered. And so we have a start date. Do we have an end date? I mean, start time. Do we have an end time?
That's a question.
That is a question.
Do we have a timekeeper for the 2 minutes?
That was my, well, we'll get to that in a minute.
That's a good question, too.
But in the past, there have been meetings where we had a 2-minute time that could be on the screen that really just does not rely on anybody holding up
So we
the
work
watch.
on that tomorrow?
But that supposedly is just it's one of those app things, right, Dr. Brown?
Yes, it's one of those app things.
One of those app things, and in my vision is have that 2 minutes clicking off right there. They sit there, it's right there. Everybody knows.
So just on the iPad, you can plug it in.
Yeah, exactly. Length of time,
So it's 2 minutes. So if we just
6 enough, 12 too many? That's an old commercial. But 90 minutes, 2 hours, what are an hour, I think?
We're to have a public hearing. That's the charge.
It's a public hearing. Format
Do they
rules.
sign up to do it so we have a list?
Oh, definitely.
You ought to get. I recommend that we collect the name of the people that speak so that they can.
Oh yeah, I mean certainly we've done.
Is that what you meant? I don't know if that's what you meant.
Yeah.
We'll capture that.
Right.
I don't think we have time.
Oh, I think there's a limit to everything, my patience, etc. But I think it's one more night for a volunteer board, volunteers to be out. So we're certainly happy to share information that we get with CSI. I think, Jay, do we go with 90 minutes and then see how we are going? We don't want to
I
limit.
think it should be an hour at least. I think 2 hours would be a long time for me. 90s. If 2 minutes, that's.
Brad, do the math. How many people inside?
64.
2 hours and 60 people.
Right.
Well,
Brad's real quick with that kind of stuff.
we shot
An hour and a half.
It's a minute in between transfers and
There's a little.
Yeah, yeah.
it's not going to be 30 people exactly.
Yeah.
An hour and a half is fine.
So we'll shoot for 90 minutes. I will throw out again. Well, not again. I will. We've done this before. This is not our first rodeo. Really, for us to tolerate any kind of disrespect to any speaker, I can't see that happening. Taking time to applaud or boo or hiss, this takes time away from other speakers. I would just offer that none of that will be allowed. There's lots of people that want to speak. If that happens, I'm not sure what. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, one, I just think that as board president, it would probably take some facilitation, so I imagine that you'll be facilitating the meeting, at least keeping it running smoothly, introducing the meeting as well. And,
Correct.
And I think it bears repeating again, but that the audience of people who come to speak, and reality shouldn't be the Ithaca City School District Board of Education, that we're not the decision-making body. So if they're coming here to speak about this issue, they really should be speaking to the Charter School Institute, which I think may have a different way in which people frame their responses. So I think that's an important thing that folks realize as well.
Right, to my point, marching on this building isn't going to, that's not going to really do much. Really, what are your comments that you want preserved and sent to the Charter School Institute? And obviously your behavior that evening, it reflects frankly, on you, not on us. Yeah, I will be here. Again, this is not a board meeting. We do not need a quorum. If you want to be here, be here. I think, unfortunately, Danielle is going to probably help out. Danielle's going to be here. Probably some others will be here. Jay, go ahead.
So, as a recommendation, I would think that it'd be best if people spoke in the same spot, perhaps there, and that they lined up, right? That's better for taping and for the sound. I also, it might form a line so that it moves along, so that when one person speaks and their time is up, the next one can speak. Maybe they give a piece of, just an idea, give a piece of paper to Danielle with their name when they're on deck, so that, or something, because they may or may not say what they can be encouraged to say I'm so-and-so before they speak, but they may forget, and if you got the piece of paper, that's good for identification purposes. That's all.
Yeah, I'd like to, Judy did a great job last time saying so-and-so speaking and up next is.
Yes.
And so there's always one or two people ahead. And so if we do that same process again,
sure, we always
right
do
now
on
who's
deck.
speaking and who's on deck, I think that helps facilitate.
Yeah, so you want to collect a
Same time sheet, do it already.
Sign-up sheet.
sign-up sheet, and we need to have that ready to go.
I have a money question.
Sure.
Because we're the receiving district or whatever, that it's housed here, and our students, let's say, cost, and I'm going to just say $10,000 apiece, we also have to provide psychologists, speech therapists, and so forth. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, if that's correct, that only happens because we're the receiving school. If it was in Dryden would have to provide that then too?
That's correct. Yeah.
So we get a double.
No, we're able to build those schools for, if we provide the school, if we provide the service.
Or is it per capita?
We do?
Yeah,
We
if
build
it
that?
can.
Okay.
But, I mean, one of the things I think when you have people speak tomorrow night, I think it'd be useful to have them identify their home school district.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea. I like that, yeah.
Again, if for no other reason than to help the Charter School Institute understand that less than half of the kids come from this district.
We can ask, but
I think in that.
I will modify the form to actually have that included on the form if you guys sign up. Right, so that way you have that information when we're together.
right. So, Dr. Brown, we get paid extra for tomorrow, right? I mean, no, is that a release time thing? I think we
You can have 2 bottles of water tomorrow, Rob.
Anything else from Corinne? Did you need to weigh in?
Actually, it just got covered.
Very good.
I think
Okay.
I guessed what she was going to bring up.
Oh, it's the extra bottle of water thing. Okay. All right.
Water.
Be there or be square. It's always interesting when it's open mic night in Ithaca. So we always appreciate that. And as far as I know, Dancing with the Stars is not on Wednesday nights. My wife watches that on Mondays, so it's all good. Yeah. So there's World Series stuff, I think, but
It starts tomorrow.
yeah,
Baseball game.
yeah. But it's not the Yankees, and so, well, frankly, who cares? Right, Bob? Right. Yeah. So we will get through this as always. But I certainly encourage if those who want to come speak. All opinions are respected. You have your 2 minutes and get the message out to the state of New York, but not to us because we're just here. And it is 2 minutes. We're not. Our board policy for board meetings is 3 minutes. Does not apply to this public hearing. Just can I make that assumption, Sean? I didn't violate any policies, right? All right. So if we're good on speaking of policies, because we kind of
Nice segue.
set that, whatever that word is, right into policies, and we're going to finish up here.
And we'll be efficient. So I move policy 2260, advisory councils and committees for a second reading and adoption this evening.
Pat was first.
No commentary on this. There's been no changes since the first reading. So it reads as it did during the first reading.
Excellent. Any questions, Jay? Pretty good?
No.
All in favor? That's everyone except for Chris, who has left the building. I'm in the room, sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
So a quick conversation about policy 2352, which is the rules of order. We had a first reading. It was sent back to the committee to have some further discussion and do some investigation. I've done a little bit of research. We've asked some legal counsel, including the New York State School Boards Association, and the short answer is that we are not legally obligated to specify a rules of order, though obviously it's recommended to keep an efficient meeting. We had a small conversation at policy committee about alternatives to Robert's rules, and there's seemed to be a relatively, I don't want to call it unanimous, but some strong reactions to just Robert's rules in general. I sent an email to the policy committee about various alternatives, and just for the community's sake and for my fellow board members' sake, there are no more or no less than at least 7 or 8 viable alternatives, among which would be sort of a consensus building approach, which the policy committee decided probably would not be best for our purposes, given the fact that we may have frequent disagreements. The democratic rules of order seem to be one of the most used alternatives, and we have asked Danielle to order 4 or 5 copies of the democratic rules of order so the committee can take a look, as well as other board members obviously take a look at what that may look like. There is the model that I think we already have underway, which is called the dynamic facilitator model, which the president of the board
Does whatever he wants to do. It's really great. Sorry, Sean.
No, I'm with you.
Strong arm.
Despite my policy committee members' lack of enthusiasm, I am still enthused by rules of order called Martha's Rules of Order, which are out there as well. And then there are other ones beyond Robert's rules. There's also Robert's modified rules. There's the standard rules. There's Riddick rules that the Senate uses, etc. And so what we're saying to the board is that we are not recommending a current rules of order. We want to continue to investigate, and most likely the recommendation will come from the policy committee unless the board has a strong response, that we write a policy that says something similar to that board meetings are allowed to run at the discretion of the board president, unless a single board member has a clause to enact immediately some standardized form of rules of order, so be it Robert's rules or be it democratic rules or whatever. The idea being that we would run our board meetings in the best way we see fit, but should a board member want a much more formalized process, that they'd be able to enact some sort of clause that says, say that we will have Robert's rules. So we understand that given our divergent perspectives, there may be times when something like Robert's rules or democratic rules would actually be very helpful to us. But we still want the flexibility to run the board meetings the best way that we think that we do currently to keep in line with policy, but also that we find probably be a little more efficient and a better flow of dialogue and debate when we're settling these issues. So if there's not strong reservations from the board, the policy committee will go back, take a look at these. We'll let you know when these books come in. You can take a look, and we'll keep debating it for a little bit of time. We're in no hurry to pass this policy.
And as Sean has said, and as we've always said, we are not always developing policies for a current board as for future boards, and what may work for this group certainly may not work for others.
Absolutely.
And I think I was at that policy committee meeting, and I think we did want to develop Martha's rules beyond that to Judy's rules, and I think that is why there's a delay in coming back with it. Really true.
Are you sure it wasn't Pat's rule?
No, it was definitely Judy's rules. Jay, go ahead.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're saying that the rules of order policy is a local policy,
correct,
not required.
Correct.
So just for the purpose of discussion, if we didn't have rules of, I look at what you've written here, rules of order, a quorum is defined.
That's not my language. That's NISBA's boilerplate language.
Yeah, but it would just seem if we didn't have something to follow, we wouldn't even have the definition of a quorum.
Not necessarily. First of all, we identify a quorum in other policies as well, so it's probably going to be between 5 or 6 policies that you find the definition of a quorum. Second of all, we're captive by New York State law. So in other words, we couldn't pass a rules of order that was against New York State law, right? So we still need a majority vote. We couldn't say starting tomorrow.
Do we in fact still need a majority vote?
Oh, absolutely. That's
so there has to be so there have to be resolutions. And a vote on them.
Yes,
By law.
for the board to act as a board legally, there has to be a majority.
So what we're talking about in the rules of order is how we get to a resolution and vote upon it.
Absolutely. And as we know, sometimes there could be debate where we can just keep going on debate. And the purpose of Robert's rules is actually to find ways to make that debate end in some regards, right? I mean, that's one of the functions why it exists, is how do we stop conversation and actually get ourselves to a vote. Which has not seemed to be our problem, but as Rob said, that this isn't going to be the board forever, and so we're trying to write a policy that also takes into consideration that a board may need rules of order to be able to function.
And so, I got confused because you mentioned that we might, in some fashion, operate with a unanimous kind of.
No, one of the options out there is literally a consensus building approach, and it gets recommended pretty highly that a board could operate by consensus. It's difficult work to do, but it's not impossible.
Even to the ends of vote on a resolution.
Doesn't mean, and let's not miss, consensus doesn't mean a unanimous vote. Consensus means that all folks can generally agree or can live with the resolution that's going forward. So you can still have folks who disagree with the decision and still come to a consensus. But we would need training on those kind of models, and there's workbooks out there. There's a good deal of work that would go involved.
And someone's told you that there are there's a lot or whatever school boards operating?
No one's told me there's school boards out there.
Okay.
And the fabulous use of technology, I've been able to research to find that there are other boards. They may not be school boards, but right there, it's a common approach used by other governing bodies.
Thank you.
And we're not recommending. That's why we're exploring the democratic rules.
Right. Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
We'll get back in. And we're carrying part of this conversation again on Thursday. Well, I don't think we'll solve anything by then, but we'll keep you informed, or I'll send email updates out to folks as well.
And not to give the impression that we're advocating mayhem by the board president. The board president, whoever that may be, takes on certain roles and responsibilities. One of those is to run the meeting by the agenda that has been created by the collaboration with the board president, officers, the board, and the superintendent, and that lends itself to a certain meeting style. And you're certainly going to go through the agenda. Otherwise, you're really not performing your duties as
It doesn't address the formation and proposal of resolutions.
Right.
Their discussion,
right, exactly. And that's how you relationship that's built over time. So, anything else?
Just to Jay's point, some of that, Jay, is also included in, for example, the previous policies we passed last week about the creation of the agenda, about who can actually add the resolutions or items to the agenda as well. So it may not be all covered in this particular policy, but eventually, as the policy book gets completed and completely revamped, we'll hopefully cover all those items.
Okay. Good. All right.
So,
if nothing else,
yep, that was just an information piece. I move policy 3000, goals and objectives, for a first reading.
Second.
We tried something a little bit different with this policy. If you notice in your Dropbox, that when we made changes, we tried to keep the original language and draw lines and deletions so you can see what we thought was extraneous. Okay. There should be a highlight. The bullet point that's right above the underlined stuff was actually an addition that we took directly from our goals and objectives, the ICSD Board of Education priorities. But there's the language there you can see.
Questions? It's been moved. We good?
Yeah. It's a local policy. It's not required. Rob talked about trying to create policy for future boards. That goes kind of long-term vision, and this one has the T-shirt slogan: educate, engage, and empower. And that's specific to us. And if we change our T-shirt theme this year to something else, and it's not required, and I'm getting a little bit, I don't know, concerned's the word, but just kind of in increasing the number of local policies that we have. this sounds like an extra one that we may not need, and it's specific to us, and it'll perhaps die on the books and be stale if we, change our slogan or our focus next year. So I just want to caution us to look at these local policies and really consider they're local for a reason, how fat we want to make this book. And that's all I want to say. It's not anything so bad about this policy, but just kind of the idea of being policy rich.
Right, just as you bring up a point to many of the policies, how many are needed and how many are good to have and how many do we have to have. And is this replacing a current policy or is it in addition?
It is replacing current policy, but let me speak to that in a couple of ways. One, where it's in this example, it's unfortunate we're talking about the 3000 series, which only has 3 policies. So in terms of having a fat policy book, this may not be the series that helps exemplify that idea. This is the 3 policies there are actually 4 policies recommended by NISBA, and we've already nixed 1. Right, so these are the 3 policies that we're putting forward as a local policy. The idea behind this policy in particular, and I think other local policies, is that the school board should articulate and communicate to the community what it believes the goals of the administration should be, and that there's value in the community knowing that. And so part of these ideas are information that go out, and part of them are sort of things that are either legal requirements and the like. Much more to your policy about the idea of engage, educate, and empower, while that, under no circumstances do I think of that as being a slogan. But in fact, it's actually our mission statement. And so we've already passed that policy. And so the next school board, the next superintendent, whomever, should they not like that, are going to have to go through and do a whole bunch of work. And I would dare say that sometimes some of the things we want to be a little more lasting than a simple run-of-the-mill, right? That we're actually trying to create a culture in which we're trying to educate, empower, and engage. And I'm fine with actually having the next board, the next superintendent do some work if they want to change that, to have to go through and change multiple policies. Now, that's my right. I said I'm fine, doesn't mean that we're fine as a board. But the reason why we actually put that language in there is because we've already passed a policy which identifies both our mission and our vision, which use those 3 words. And for consistency, we thought, why don't we try to be consistent throughout our policy book? And lastly, to Mr. Peacock's point, let's make no mistake about it. The policy work we're doing on this entire policy review is going to leave a legacy of this particular board and our particular insights, just in terms of language we choose and the issues that we think that we're thinking about. So some of that, I greatly understand your concern about just putting policies out there. And some of this, I think we're trying to communicate about what kind of community and what kind of district we want to have for our young folks.
And if I just could follow up on Sean's point, if you look at the language that we X'd out to and substituted educate, engage, and empower, those were very, very top-down, administrative, hierarchical, patriarchal words. And we're kind of moving out a little bit more.
Right, we had a conversation about adding the word collaboration, that we think of our administration as being much more collaborators in this work than this sort of top-down model approach. And so the language we chose for those very reasons, we were hoping that would be much more indicative of a collaborative approach as opposed to a monitoring and directing, coordinating, supervising approach. We did have some of the key central, not some of the key, we had some central administrators in the room, but we could always use more community folk, principals, teachers, students, etc. And you were also in the room, Mr. Peacock, so thank you for, I don't know if you were in the room at this point in time, but we so appreciate your attendance when you come to these things.
We would appreciate it, Jay would come.
Yeah, couldn't make it.
Next week.
Yeah, this week.
I'm good. So we're good. This is first reading. All in favor? That's almost everyone. Yes, no, it's everyone. Very good.
Great. I move policy 3100, superintendent of schools, for a first reading.
Second.
Does this mean we have to have one?
In fact, Rob, I would dare say, we went around, not about the superintendent, but we went around the conversation, should we have a policy about the superintendent schools? And we came up with the same conversation that it would be good for a board to communicate its wants and wishes and desires for a superintendent school. And you can see the highlighted area are things that were included, and the Xed out things are the things that we're suggesting should be deleted.
Are shoes in there at all?
I did make a mention. It's funny you say that. No, it didn't make the cut.
No shoes in there.
That's the next one. Job description.
Okay. First reading. Dr. Brown, do you have any input you wish to share?
I'm just happy we have one right now, but on the next one, that's more about.
Okay. All right. Okay. Was this moved in second? I missed that because I was making landing. Any questions? All right. All in favor? That's everyone. On to the last.
And then lastly, policy. I move policy 3120, duties of the superintendent, for our first reading. Anybody care to second? I'll second. Thank you, Chris Mom.
I was just distracted by the two policies, the LB edits.
So what you see here, the one that's in the Dropbox, 3120, the boilerplates, Dr. Brown and the policy committee had a conversation about their language. We thought we could simplify it a great deal, and Dr. Brown went through and added his edits. And so the ones you see, 3120 LB edits, are the ones that we would ask folks to read. That's the one that we're going to operate from. And I did go through and check some of this against Dr. Brown's language and his current contract to make sure that none of this is in conflict with that contract, and it all looks good. I was trying hard to mark up your paper.
And you didn't find any edits?
It's a first reading.
They're reading
Students are listening at home.
Could I just add, people should open up and skim through the boilerplate so they can appreciate the beautiful simplicity of Dr. Brown's edits.
Definitely. I mean, as you go through the policies, that's the first one you hit. And it's,
Can we put that DNA helix up on this thing somewhere?
I wanted to have one sentence, and the superintendent's duty is to get people to do things they choose not to. But the chair of the policy committee said that I had to have more. So we moved forward to add a paragraph that I wanted to represent the superintendent supporting the district's mission and vision, which I hope we captured in that first paragraph. And then from there, the policy committee asked that I do include some of the headings and some of the responsibilities, and I try my best to synthesize it into some simple language. I'm hoping that this is a model for the job description, because I don't know if you go out there and look at what people are writing for job description for the superintendent, especially folks who are looking to do a search right now. I can't make this up. I mean, you're asking for a Superman to walk on the water and all that, but I'm hoping we're able to capture what it is that the superintendent should do.
Okay, this is actually a slogan, 6,000 thinkers. Do we want that in our policy?
6,000 thinkers.
Vision.
Oh, sorry.
That's the vision.
Look, I hear you. It's funny when you go back and read the other policies, especially one from the 1970s, that they're very similar. That reading it 20 years later, it seems like it's archaic language, and I'm sure it's the same thing's going to happen. But for the next 20 years, we're going to be pushing these 6,000 plus thinkers, 6,000 plus thinkers for me.
And they're going to say, what was the board?
That's
The
right.
Ainsley board.
Which is
Good legacy.
Yes, I know. There's a legacy for it. Chris, did you have
The personal qualities and growth with the LB edits. While I appreciate them,
Yep.
Yeah, the humility part.
I like that one especially.
And wait, is presence
No, actually,
the
that's
matter and
those might
the
be
dress?
sought after.
You can't lead without humility. Without humility, you won't listen anymore. And I've learned this job is not listening to people. You can't lead.
Witness the Commissioner of Education.
Yes.
exactly.
You know, the funny thing is, you look at, again, the NISBA boilerplate, you'll find that these sort of characteristics, it's always interesting when we talk about superintendent, what kind of characteristics they feel like should go in the job description. And it's all these sorts of things, right? So even in the boilerplate, it's all about notions of humility, or humility, respectability. Like it's interesting language. But we can take a look at it tomorrow on Thursday. Chris Malcolm.
Wow.
I know.
I'm committing all these.
Professor House at Ithaca College. My apologies.
Presents, Judy. That is.
The dress, the shoes.
No, that's more for. So sometimes the most important thing is being there. And that's, you're here.
Oh, to me, presence means.
To me, that means
Being present.
being in being in this building, being in the other buildings, being in all the buildings.
That's what I'm excited too. That's the dress thing is cool, but I didn't really.
Well, to me, presence is gaining respect. You know.
We can wordsmith on Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But that is the last policy for today, and we will vote on this now, correct? First reading, all in favor? That's everyone? All right. So, Sean, that's it, right?
That is it.
Okay. Any other business by board, superintendent, et cetera? Are we good? Anything else? There are obviously some
One more,
committee. Pat, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, I don't know if other people saw it, but my husband and I watched a lovely piece on YNN last night about our high school television station.
Oh.
Very nicely done.
Didn't see that.
Great. I found out how much it cost because I've been going to finance committee meetings, but it was a really nicely done piece, showcased a number of students. The teacher took a look at the equipment and was very complimentary of how far we're moving forward in this district and what we've been able to offer our students. So thank you, Dr. Brown, and the people who work with you.
Yeah, I had some questions about the cost too. That was a bit misleading with the way we've been able to leverage BOCE's aid and lease agreements. It really wasn't a $500,000 bit.
Well, that's good to know too.
I mean, we were in 3-year lease agreements for the hardware. BOCE's aid at about 50%, so more like about $70,000.
So that was the value, not the cost.
Correct. The value and the cost
good way to put it.
borne by us.
Yeah, so
Excellent.
you would have known that I think we put $500,000 in the line.
That's that way.
I just thought it was the finance committee working their miracles like they do.
And that is true.
Yeah, well, still, eventually that is taxpayer dollars from somewhere. I would point that out. It's great when things are aidable, but it still is coming out of the resources for education in New York State, let's put it that way, and resources that we'll take advantage of in this. Obviously, committee meetings are listed. Policy has been mentioned. There's a great curriculum meeting today that is very excellent discussions that I was not part of. I was still at work, but it was very, and Judy will report out. Frankly, I think you probably should. Well, just go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, no, excellent meeting for curriculum on the goal, and somebody mentioned it with relationship to something else about all children being able to read at grade level or above by 3rd grade. And from that goal, which I wrote, we went off on tangents on what that exactly means, what's holding us back, how can we do it, do we really mean all children? I mean, we had an excellent discussion, good hour and a half discussion, which we will continue next month.
And the focus next month will be on the concrete actions we need to take to move towards that
forward,
goal.
yeah.
And now it's kind of, today was a philosophical discussion about.
We'll probably have some more philosophical discussions, but yeah.
Very good. Thank you for that, Judy. Even though we follow no rules, it's 9 o'clock and we're about done for tonight. So
I move that we adjourn.
without objection, thank you both. And we'll see folks tomorrow night. Brad said he's going to be